Dr. Alice Morgan stared through the reinforced windows of the Lunar Research Station, her coffee growing cold in her hands. The stars looked different from the moon. Closer, brighter, more threatening. After 5 years of studying potential alien life forms, she had grown used to disappointment. But today was different. The object had appeared 3 hours ago. At first, the station's sensors marked it as space debris, but debris didn't move against orbital patterns. Debris didn't shine like crystal. And debris certainly didn't stop perfectly still above the moon's surface. "Dr. Morgan, we're getting some unusual readings," said Jack, her young assistant, his voice shaking slightly. "The crystal structure, it's changing." Alice rushed to the monitoring station. The massive screen showed the object in detail. A vessel about the size of a football field, its surface shifting like liquid glass. Beautiful patterns rippled across its hull, forming and dissolving in seconds. "Are we recording this?" she asked, pressing her hand against the cool surface of the display. "Every second," Jack replied. "Houston is going crazy. So is Beijing. Actually, every space agency on Earth is demanding updates." The crystalline ship hung motionless, its surface continuing its hypnotic dance. Then, without warning, it released a pulse of light. Alice grabbed the edge of the console as the entire station shuddered. "Status report," she called out. "No damage," reported Linda from the engineering station. "But, Dr. Morgan, you need to see this." The main screen changed to show the station's exterior. Hundreds of tiny crystals floated in space around them, each one perfect and identical, each one glowing with an inner light. "They're transmitting," Jack whispered. "All of them. Different frequencies, different patterns." Alice felt her heart race. After years of searching the stars for signs of life, life had found them. The crystals weren't just beautiful. They were a message, a language written in light and geometry. The station's communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke, clear, precise, and perfectly human. "Greetings, Lunar Research Station. We are representatives of the Galactic Council. We come with purpose." Alice exchanged looks with her team. The voice continued, "We have been watching. We have been waiting. The time has come for humanity to face its evaluation." Through the window, Alice watched as the crystals began to move in perfect formation, creating complex three-dimensional patterns in space. The main ship pulsed with colors she had never seen before, colors that shouldn't exist. "Dr. Morgan," the voice said, making her jump. "Your species stands at a crossroads. We have monitored Earth's progress for centuries. Your development has been concerning." The word concerning hung in the air like a threat. Alice straightened her back and stepped forward. "This is Dr. Alice Morgan of the Lunar Research Station. We welcome you and wish to understand your purpose here." "Understanding," the voice replied, "is precisely what we seek. Your species is unique in ways you cannot comprehend. The Council requires proof of humanity's worth, or evidence of humanity's threat." The main ship moved closer to the station, its crystalline surface now completely transparent. Inside, Alice could see figures moving. Tall, elegant shapes that seemed to be made of the same crystal as their ship. Their forms flowed and shifted like living glass. "We are the Zentheri," the voice explained. "We speak for the Council. You have 1 Earth month to prepare. The evaluation begins then. Should you fail, Earth will be isolated. No contact, no trade, no knowledge of the greater galaxy." Alice felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. In one moment, everything had changed. Humanity wasn't alone in the universe, but their place in it hung by a thread. "And if we pass?" she asked. The crystalline ship pulsed once more, filling the station with rainbow light. Then the voice said, "You will face an even greater challenge. The truth about your species, a truth that terrifies the galaxy." As the light faded, Alice looked at her team's worried faces. Whatever this truth was, whatever these tests would reveal, She knew humanity stood on the edge of its greatest adventure, or its final judgment. Commander Peter Wright stood in the newly constructed First Contact Center, watching the Zenthuri representatives glide across the floor. Their crystalline forms caught the light, sending rainbow patterns dancing across the walls. 2 weeks had passed since their arrival, and humanity was about to face its first test. The evaluation will consist of 3 challenges, the Lid Zenthuri announced, its voice smooth and artificial. Each will measure different aspects of your species. Peter noticed something odd about their visitors. Despite their advanced technology and seemingly peaceful approach, the aliens kept their distance. When humans moved closer, the Zenthuri would drift back, maintaining a careful gap. Their crystalline bodies would flutter with quick pulses of color, something Peter had learned to recognize as anxiety. "We're ready to begin," Peter said, keeping his voice steady. Behind him stood a team of Earth's finest, scientists, soldiers, and diplomats chosen from every nation. "What's our first challenge?" The Zenthuri's surface rippled with blue light. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room, showing a complex 3-dimensional puzzle. "Solve this within 1 hour," they said. "It will test your logical capacity." The puzzle looked simple enough, a series of interlocking shapes that needed to be arranged in a specific pattern. But as the team began working, Peter saw the trap. The solution wasn't about logic at all. "Stop," he called out after 20 minutes of frustrated attempts. His team looked up, confused. "We're approaching this wrong. Look at how the Zenthuri build their ships. They don't think in straight lines." He stepped forward and waved his hand through the hologram. The shapes responded to his movement, flowing like water. "It's not about putting pieces together. It's about understanding how they flow." The Zenthuri's colors shifted to a deep purple. Peter caught a ripple of what seemed like surprise passing through their forms. Within minutes, his team had solved the puzzle by treating it like a liquid rather than a solid structure. "Interesting," the Lid Zenthuri said. "Most species take the full hour to realize this. You adapted quickly, perhaps too quickly." The second challenge involved responding to a series of scenarios. Each one presented a conflict between alien species, asking how humanity would handle the situation. Peter noticed a pattern. Every scenario could be solved with violence, but doing so would be the worst choice. In this case, Peter explained to his team, "We would establish a neutral trade zone. Both species get what they need. No one needs to fight." He watched the Zenthuri carefully as he spoke. Their colors flickered rapidly. Fear, excitement, both. The final test was the strangest. The Zenthuri presented them with what looked like a simple box. "Open it," they said. For hours, the team tried everything. They analyzed its structure, attempted to decode possible hidden mechanisms, even tried asking it politely to open. Nothing worked. Peter sat back, watching the Zenthuri watch them. Every failed attempt seemed to make the aliens more anxious, their crystalline forms vibrating with increasing intensity. Then he understood. "We're not going to open it," he announced. The room fell silent. The Zenthuri's colors froze mid-pulse. "Why?" they asked. "Because you're not testing our ability to open it. You're testing whether we'll respect boundaries. If you wanted us to open it, you would have told us how. This is a test of restraint." The box vanished. The Zenthuri moved closer together, their voices mixing in harmonic tones as they discussed among themselves. Finally, the leader turned back to Peter. "Your species shows remarkable perception. You see patterns. You adapt. You understand restraint. And yet, the alien's form shimmered with what Peter now recognized as fear. And yet you could have broken the box. You chose not to. This ability to choose, it disturbs us." Peter stepped forward, careful not to move too quickly. "Choice is what makes us human. We can choose to break things, yes, but we can also choose to understand them instead. That," the Zenthuri said, its voice dropping to a whisper, "is precisely what terrifies us. Prepare your species, Commander Wright. Tomorrow, you learn why the galaxy fears humanity's greatest power, the power to choose between creation and destruction. The aliens departed, leaving Peter alone with his thoughts and a growing sense that these tests weren't about proving humanity's worth. They were about confirming humanity's nature, a nature that somehow scared beings who could cross the stars. Dr. Susan Kelly sat in her observation room, surrounded by screens showing different Centauri interactions. After 3 weeks of studying their behavior, she had noticed something that nobody else had picked up on. The aliens weren't just cautious around humans, they were physically incapable of any aggressive action. She rewound the footage from yesterday's incident when a coffee cup had fallen off a table. The human in the room had instantly reached out to catch it. The Centauri present had simply watched it fall, their crystalline forms trembling with distress at their inability to help. "Look at this," she said to Officer Daniel Clark, who had stopped by to deliver his weekly security report. "They don't just choose not to act. They can't act. It's like they're missing something fundamental that we take for granted." Daniel leaned closer to the screen, his eyes narrowing. "That explains the security gaps I've been finding. Their ships have no weapons. Their systems have no firewalls. They don't even have basic protection against accidents." Susan pulled up another video, this one showing a Centauri trying to explain their faster-than-light technology. "See how they move when explaining their ships. No sudden movements, no quick gestures. Everything they do is slow, planned, peaceful. A species that can't comprehend violence," Daniel muttered. "No wonder they're so afraid of us. We must look like unstoppable monsters to them." A light flashed on Susan's computer. One of her monitoring programs had picked up something unusual. She typed quickly, bringing up a new set of readings. "Daniel, look at this. There's another signal hidden in the Centauri's communication broadcasts." Daniel moved to her computer, his security training kicking in. "That's not Centauri. The pattern is completely different. More aggressive." They worked together, trying to decode the hidden signal. Hours passed as they dug deeper into the mysterious transmission. The sun was setting outside their window when they finally cracked it. "These are observation notes," Susan said, her voice growing excited. "But not from the Centauri. Someone else is watching the tests. Someone called the Nexari." Daniel read through the decoded messages, his face growing serious. "The Nexari are tracking everything. Every test, every response, every interaction. But they're not afraid of us like the Centauri. They're interested in us." Susan found more decoded files, these containing images. They showed creatures that looked nothing like the crystalline Centauri. The Nexari were dark, solid beings with sharp edges and quick movements. Their technology wasn't beautiful like the Centauri's. It was efficient, practical, built for action. "They're like us," Susan whispered. "Look at their cities. They have defenses. Their ships have weapons. They understand the concept of protection, of fighting back." A new message appeared in the decoded stream. Daniel translated it quickly. "Human response matches predicted patterns. They share our dual nature. Recommend immediate contact before Centauri evaluation completes." "Dual nature?" Susan asked, but Daniel was already pulling up more files. "The galaxy isn't just divided by space," he explained, pointing to the data. "It's divided by nature. Most species are like the Centauri, completely peaceful, incapable of violence. But a few, like the Nexari, are different. They can choose. They can fight or make peace. They can create or destroy." Susan looked at the images of Earth included in the Nexari files. They showed humans building hospitals next to military bases, creating art and weapons, dancing and fighting. "We're not being tested to join their galaxy," she realized. "We're being classified. The Centauri want to know if we're like them or like the Nexari," Daniel finished. "And I don't think the Nexari are planning to wait for the test results." As if responding to his words, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. On Susan's screens, new ships appeared, dark, angular vessels nothing like the crystalline beauty of Zenthari craft. The Nexari had decided to make their move. Susan looked at Daniel, both of them understanding the gravity of the moment. Humanity had just become the center of a conflict between the galaxy's most peaceful species and its most dynamic ones, and they weren't ready for either side's plans for Earth. Lieutenant Mary Phillips watched as the Nexari ships surrounded Earth's orbital defense stations. Her small fleet of 6 ships was all that stood between them and the planet below. The Zenthari representatives had frozen in terror, their crystalline forms barely holding shape as they witnessed the approaching conflict. "All stations, report status," Mary called out from the bridge of her ship. The screen showed 12 Nexari vessels, their dark hulls absorbing light like shadows in space. "They're targeting our defense platforms," her weapons officer reported. "Energy readings suggest their weapons are powered up but not locked on." Mary understood the message. The Nexari were showing they could fight, but they were waiting for something. Through the main view screen, she could see their ships, angular, efficient, and built for combat. So different from the flowing crystal ships of the Zenthari. "Lieutenant," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the Nexari fleet." The screen lit up with the image of a Nexari commander. Unlike the flowing, peaceful forms of the Zenthari, this alien looked solid and sharp, its dark surface reflecting light like polished obsidian. "Humans," the Nexari spoke, its voice deep and clear. "We have watched your tests. You are like us, capable of both peace and war. Join us. Together, we can protect the galaxy from itself." Mary glanced at the Zenthari representatives who had taken refuge on her ship. They were trembling, their forms rippling with waves of fear-colored light. She thought about what Dr. Kelly had discovered about the galaxy's divided nature. "And if we refuse?" she asked. "Then we must eliminate you," the Nexari commander replied simply. "The galaxy cannot risk another species with the power of choice. Better to end you now than allow you to grow stronger." Mary looked at her tactical display. The Nexari ships had better weapons and stronger shields, but they had positioned themselves predictably, like pieces on a chessboard. They fought with pure logic, no creativity. "All ships," she said to her fleet, "implement defense pattern Phillips 7. Her ships began to move, but not to attack. Instead, they positioned themselves between the Nexari and the defense platforms, deliberately leaving gaps in their formation. The Nexari ships immediately moved to take advantage of these apparent weaknesses. "An interesting choice," the Nexari commander said. "Accepting defeat." Mary smiled. "No, teaching a lesson." The Nexari ships flew into the gaps, exactly as she had predicted. The moment they were in position, Mary gave the signal. Her fleet's formation suddenly made sense. They had created a web, and the Nexari had walked right into it. "All ships, activate defensive screens. Full power," she ordered. Energy fields sprang up between her vessels, connecting them in a complex pattern. The Nexari ships found themselves trapped in pockets of space, unable to maneuver without hitting the energy fields. "You see," Mary explained to the Nexari commander, "humans don't just choose between peace and war. We find new options. We could have fought you directly and lost. We could have surrendered and lived as your allies. Instead, we chose to show you something new." The Zenthari had stopped trembling. They watched in fascination as Mary's fleet held the Nexari ships in place without firing a single shot. "You want to protect the galaxy," Mary continued. "So do we. But protection doesn't always mean destruction. Sometimes it means finding a better way." The Nexari commander was silent for a long moment. Finally, it spoke. "You trap us without violence, show strength without destruction. Perhaps we have more to learn from humans than we thought." "Stand down your weapons," Mary offered, "and let's talk. Not as enemies or allies, but as species who understand both peace and power. Let's show the galaxy there's more than 2 ways to exist." As the Nexari weapons powered down, Mary saw the Zenthari beginning to pulse with new colors. Not fear this time, but something that looked like hope. In finding a third option between peace and war, humanity had just proven why they were different from both the Zenthari and the Nexari. They weren't just capable of choice, they were capable of creating new choices entirely. Dr. Howard Martinez sat in his lab, surrounded by holographic displays showing data from both Zenthari and Nexari ships. After Lieutenant Phillips's clever solution to the space battle, both alien species had shared their historical records with Earth. Now, Howard had the task of understanding why humanity scared them so much. "Look at this," he said to Dr. Alice Morgan, who had joined him from the lunar station. "The galaxy has over 500 known intelligent species, but only 3 of them can do what we do." He pulled up a diagram showing different alien civilizations. Most of them glowed with a soft blue light, like the Zenthari. Only a few, including the Nexari, showed up in red. Earth stood alone, marked in purple. "The blue ones are the peaceful species," Alice said, looking at the display. "They can only create, never destroy. The red ones are like the Nexari. They understand both peace and violence." Howard nodded, bringing up more data. "But here's what makes humans different. The Nexari choose violence first, and peace second. They fight, then talk. We can do both at the same time." He showed her videos from Earth's history: soldiers building schools in war zones, doctors treating enemy soldiers, artists turning weapons into sculptures, scientists using explosion studies to create better safety systems. "Most species in the galaxy are locked into their nature," Howard explained. "The peaceful ones can't comprehend violence. The warrior races can't fully embrace peace. But humans, we can do both." Alice finished. "We can fight when we need to and build when we can. We understand both sides." Howard pulled up the data from the recent space incident. "Look at what Lieutenant Phillips did. The Zenthari would never think of creating an energy web. They don't understand trapping others. The Nexari would never use it because it doesn't destroy the enemy. But we found a third way." Their computer beeped as new data arrived from the Nexari ships. Howard opened the files, his eyes widening as he read. "Alice, look at this," he said, his voice getting excited. "The Nexari have been searching the galaxy for species like us. They found only one other, and they're extinct now." "What happened to them?" Alice asked. "They destroyed themselves," Howard said quietly. "They couldn't balance their two natures. The Nexari think the same thing will happen to them eventually. That's why they wanted to control us. They're afraid of their own nature, and we remind them of it." Alice walked to the window, looking out at the Earth glowing blue and green in space. "So that's the truth they were so afraid of. Humanity isn't just another species that can fight or build. We're what both sides fear most. Proof that their way isn't the only way." Howard brought up more historical data. "The peaceful species fear us because we show them that their perfect peace might not be the best path. The warrior races fear us because we show them they don't have to be trapped by their violent nature. And both sides fear us because we could become more powerful than either of them." Alice added. "We can learn from both sides, understand both views, and create new solutions they would never think of." Just then, both their computers lit up with urgent messages. The Zenthari Council was calling an emergency meeting, and they wanted Earth to attend. The Nexari were also sending representatives. "They're not just afraid of us anymore," Howard said, reading the messages. "They're starting to see what we could offer. The Zenthari want to learn how to protect themselves without violence. The Nexari want to understand how to embrace peace without losing their strength." Alice smiled as she gathered her research materials. "Then we'll show them what humanity does best. We'll teach them how to change, how to grow, how to be more than what their nature tells them they must be." Howard looked at the galaxy map one last time before heading to the meeting. Earth's purple dot now glowed brighter than ever, not as a warning sign, but as a beacon of hope for species trapped by their own limitations. The most terrifying truth about humanity wasn't their capacity for violence or peace. It was their ability to show others that change was possible. Captain Lisa Brown stood before the Galactic Council, her voice steady as she addressed the largest gathering of alien species ever assembled. The great hall stretched out before her, filled with crystalline Xanthari on one side and dark, angular Nexeri on the other. Between them sat representatives from hundreds of other worlds, all watching Earth's first official address to the galaxy. "We understand your fears," Lisa began, her words translated instantly into 50 different languages. "You look at humanity and see something that shouldn't exist, a species that can both create and destroy, that knows both peace and war." Behind her, a display showed scenes from Earth's history. Children playing in parks next to memorial statues, hospitals built where battles once raged, space stations growing food using technology developed for war. "But what you see as a contradiction, we see as balance," she continued. "Yes, humans can fight. We can destroy. We know anger and violence, but we also know love, creativity, and healing, often in the same moment, in the same person." The Xanthari representatives shimmered with nervous light, while the Nexeri sat perfectly still, their dark surfaces reflecting the hall's lights like mirrors. "You've shown us your worlds," Lisa said, changing the display. "The Xanthari build beautiful cities with no walls, no weapons, no concept of defense. The Nexeri create fortress worlds, ready for war at any moment. Both of you think your way is the only way to survive." She walked down the steps toward the council floor, moving between the two groups. "But look at what Lieutenant Phillips showed us all. When faced with conflict, she didn't choose between peace and war. She created a third option. That's humanity's gift to the galaxy." The display changed again, showing the energy web that had trapped the Nexeri ships without harming them. Many council members leaned forward, studying the images with new interest. "The Xanthari fear us because we show them that pure peace can be vulnerable," Lisa explained. "The Nexeri fear us because we show them that constant readiness for war isn't the only way to be strong. But what if, instead of fearing what we represent, you learned from it?" She gestured to a group of human scientists and diplomats who entered the hall. "We're not here to join your galaxy as just another species. We're here to help bridge the gap between different ways of thinking, to show the peaceful races how to protect themselves without losing their nature, and to show the warrior races how to embrace peace without becoming vulnerable." A Xanthari counselor floated forward, its crystal form pulsing with curious colors. "You would teach us defense, without violence." "Yes," Lisa answered, "just as we would teach the Nexeri about strength through cooperation, not just conflict." A Nexeri representative stepped forward, its dark surface shifting slightly. "Your species speaks of change, but change is dangerous. The galaxy has worked this way for millions of years." Lisa smiled. "Change is only dangerous when you resist it. But when you guide it, shape it, learn from it, that's how species grow. That's how civilizations advance. That's what humanity does best." She turned to address the entire council again. "We're not here to make the Xanthari into warriors or the Nexeri into pacifists. We're here to show you that there are more choices than just peace or war. There are infinite possibilities between those extremes, and humanity has spent its entire history exploring them." The hall fell silent as her words sank in. Then, slowly, a Xanthari crystal began to pulse with a new color, one that matched the dark surface of a nearby Nexeri. Others followed, the two vastly different species finding, for the first time, a way to show unity. "The truth about humanity isn't that we're dangerous," Lisa concluded. "The truth is that we're proof that change is possible, that no species has to be trapped by their nature, that the galaxy can be more than just two opposite sides never understanding each other." As she finished speaking, something unprecedented happened. The Xanthari and Nexeri representatives moved closer together, their ancient fear and distrust giving way to cautious curiosity. In that moment, Lisa saw humanity's real role in the galaxy, not as a threat to be feared or a power to be controlled, but as teachers showing the way to a future where understanding bridged the gaps between all species. 1 year after Earth's first contact with the Zenthari, Dr. Alice Morgan stood in the new Galactic Exchange Center on the Moon. The building itself showed how much had changed. Its walls combined Zenthari crystal technology with Nexari defensive systems, creating something entirely new, something uniquely human in its balance of beauty and strength. The first class of alien students arrives today, Commander Peter Wright said, walking up beside her. He had traded his military uniform for diplomatic robes, though he still stood with a soldier's straight back. Hard to believe how much has changed, Alice replied, watching ships approach the landing bay. A year ago, they were testing us. Now they're sending their people to learn from us. The ships landing outside showed the progress they'd made. Zenthari vessels now had protective shields based on Lieutenant Phillips's energy web design. Nexari ships carried medical bays and science labs. Both species were learning to be more complete, more balanced. Dr. Kelly's latest report is very promising, Peter said, checking his tablet. The Zenthari are starting to understand defensive thinking without losing their peaceful nature. And the Nexari? Well, you should see their new garden cities. Through the window, they watched as the first students emerged from their ships. Zenthari crystals floated alongside solid Nexari forms, no longer separated by fear. Behind them came representatives from 12 other species, all here to learn humanity's most important lesson: how to grow beyond their limitations. Officer Daniel Clark appeared at a doorway. "You're going to want to see this," he said, leading them to the main control room. "We just got the final count. Over 300 species have signed up for the exchange program, even some we've never met before." Dr. Howard Martinez looked up from his research station, grinning. "And that's not all. The Galactic Council just approved our proposal. They're creating a new position, mediators of balance. Guess who they want to fill it? Humanity," Alice said softly. "They want us to help guide the galaxy's evolution." Lieutenant Mary Phillips, now Admiral Phillips, joined them at the main display. "We've already got requests for help with 50 different conflicts. Not to fight in them, to show them new ways to solve them." The screen showed their upcoming assignments. Border disputes where they would teach defensive positioning without aggression. Trade conflicts where they would show how competition and cooperation could work together. Cultural exchanges where different species would learn to understand each other's views. Captain Brown's diplomatic team just sent an update. Peter added, "The Zenthari and Nexari have agreed to build a joint research station. First time in galactic history 2 opposite nature species have worked together like this." Alice walked to her old research station, where it had all begun. The first message from the Zenthari still played on a loop. "Your species stands at a crossroads." They were right, she said. We did stand at a crossroads, but not the one they thought. They believed we had to choose between being peaceful or warlike. Instead, we showed them there were other paths. "Speaking of paths," Mary said, "the first human deep space exploration fleet launches next week. Peaceful ships with defensive capabilities, scientific missions with military escorts. The galaxy's never seen anything like it." "The galaxy's never seen anything like humanity," Howard corrected. "That's why they feared us at first. We didn't fit their understanding of how species should behave. Now they're learning that not fitting in can be a good thing." Through the windows, more ships were arriving. Alien students eager to learn, diplomats seeking guidance, scientists ready to share knowledge. Earth had become what no one expected. Not a threat to the galaxy's balance, but the key to its future. "You know what the really funny thing is," Peter said, watching the arrivals. "They called it the most terrifying truth about humanity. But it wasn't terrifying at all. The truth about humanity is that we can change, adapt, grow, and help others do the same." Alice smiled as she watched a young Zenthari crystal practicing defense movements, while a Nexari student learned about art. "That's the real truth about humanity," she said. We're not just capable of both creation and destruction. We're capable of showing others how to be more than they ever thought possible. As the Earth rose over the lunar horizon, casting its blue light across the gathered ships of 100 worlds, humanity's role in the galaxy had become clear. They weren't meant to choose between being peaceful or powerful. They were meant to show the galaxy that every species could be both, and more. The most terrifying truth about humanity had become the galaxy's greatest hope: the power to change.